My name is Nick, and for a long time, I believed my marriage was strong, not perfect, but solid. Audrey and I had been together for years, navigating the usual ups and downs. No matter what challenges came our way, we always managed to work through them, or at least, that's what I thought. Looking back now, I see things differently. While I was holding on to the belief that our marriage was secure, Audrey had already begun to drift away. It didn't happen suddenly. Rather, it was a series of subtle changes. She stopped doing the little thoughtful things she once did. At first, I brushed it off. Life gets stressful, people's moods shift. But this was different. This wasn't just stress. People don't wake up one morning and start treating their spouse like an afterthought. Changes like that don't come without a reason. And I was determined to find out what that reason was. She started coming home late more often, and when I asked where she had been, her answers were vague, almost indifferent. "Just out," she would reply, barely looking up from her phone. If I pressed for more details, she'd sigh or roll her eyes as if I were bothering her. That wasn't like her. Audrey had always shared things with me, even the smallest details of her day. Now, I was lucky if I got more than a one-word answer. And then there was her phone. It was always with her, no matter what. Whether she was sitting in the living room or just grabbing a glass of water, it never left her side. At night, I would notice the faint glow of the screen in the dark. "Who are you texting?" I asked once. "Just a friend," she said without looking up. But when I asked which friend, her tone shifted, sharp, defensive. "Why do you care?" That was the moment I knew something was really wrong. One night, lying in bed, I finally confronted her. "Audrey, what's going on? Why are you acting like this?" She exhaled sharply, as if the question itself exhausted her. If I had something to say, I'd say it. "Let me sleep." Her words stung. They confirmed what I had been afraid to admit. A few days later, the truth came to me, not from her, but from a friend. His voice was serious over the phone. "Look, I hate to be the one to say this, but you should keep an eye on Audrey. I saw her with another man, and it didn't look like just friends." I was stunned. My first instinct was denial. No, not Audrey. Not my wife. There had to be some mistake. But then I thought about everything. The distance, the secrecy, the late nights, the guarded phone, the shift in her attitude. And suddenly, the truth became undeniable. This hadn't come out of nowhere. I want to believe otherwise, but deep down, I already knew. Still, knowing something and proving it were two different things. I needed proof. And that meant starting with her phone. Audrey had always been protective of it, but lately, she had taken it to another level. She never left it unattended. Even when stepping outside for just a moment, whenever she used it, she would angle the screen away from me. That alone was suspicious. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed more. And then, one night, the opportunity came. She left her phone on the couch and walked into the bathroom. My heart pounded as I reached for it. I reached for the phone. This was my chance. Swiping up, I tried to unlock it, but the screen remained locked. My worst fear was confirmed. The password had been changed. Just to be sure, I entered the old one. Incorrect. My stomach twisted. Audrey and I had never kept our passwords from each other. This wasn't an accident or a simple change. It was deliberate. She was hiding something. And whatever it was, she didn't want me to find out. If I couldn't access her phone, I had to take another approach. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. A few days later, the opportunity finally came. Audrey casually mentioned she was heading out to run an errand. No details, no explanation, no mention of who, just vague enough to set off alarm bells in my gut. I decided to follow her. Waiting a few minutes after she left, I grabbed my keys and drove off, keeping a safe distance so she wouldn't notice. I trailed her through several streets until she pulled up in front of a house I didn't recognize. She got out of the car and walked straight to the door, knocking with the ease of someone who had done it before. Then the door opened. A man stood there, someone I had never seen before. He wasn't surprised to see her. In fact, he smiled. Without hesitation, he stepped aside, and Audrey walked in. The door shut behind them. And just like that, My wife was inside another man's home. I didn't barge in. I didn't confront her. I didn't cause a scene. I simply pulled out my phone and took pictures, capturing everything. For a few minutes, I sat there, staring at the house, feeling my marriage unravel in front of me. Then quietly, I started the car and drove home. That night, Audrey returned as if nothing had changed. That was the part that hurt the most. I had seen the truth with my own eyes, but she acted like everything was fine, like she hadn't just spent time with another man behind my back. I had waited long enough. Calling her into the living room, I told her to sit. She sighed, irritated, but complied, arms crossed, eyes locked on me. Her posture made it clear. She thought she had better things to do. I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze. End this, whatever this is, or we're done. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I simply stated the reality. She frowned, shaking her head. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice flat. There's nothing going on. I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward her. The photos were there, clear shots of her entering his house, laughing with him. For a split second, I saw it, that brief flicker of guilt. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by something else. Anger. You followed me? That's insane, she snapped. You don't trust me, so now you're stalking me? That's sick, Nick. A cold wave washed over me. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't even surprised. There was no remorse, no apology. Instead of admitting what she had done, she was flipping it back on me, turning me into the villain for uncovering the truth. I exhaled slowly and nodded to myself. Got it, I said, standing up. I didn't argue. There was no point. She had already made her choice. The following week passed in silence. We still lived under the same roof, but we weren't a couple anymore. Just two people occupying the same space, waiting for something to break. No small talk, no forced smiles, just emptiness. She never tried to explain herself. And by then, I didn't expect her to. I already knew she wasn't going to stop seeing him. And I wasn't about to beg for loyalty. That wasn't love. That was desperation. And I refused to be desperate. So while Audrey carried on as if nothing had changed, I understood the truth. Everything already had. Quietly, I met with my lawyer and set the wheels in motion. If she was so eager to be with him, she could have him. But she wasn't going to drag me down in the process. Maybe she was starting to feel guilty and wanted to smooth things over. Or maybe this was just another calculated move, a confession, an excuse, or one last attempt to manipulate me before delivering the final blow. It didn't matter, because what she didn't know was that I'd already made my move. The divorce papers were ready, neatly stacked in a folder, waiting for the right moment. But that wasn't the only surprise I had in store. While she had been sneaking around with her lover, I had found someone too, her best friend. It started as nothing more than conversation, a shared frustration over Audrey's behavior. But over time, it became something more. She saw through Audrey's facade better than anyone, understood exactly what I had been dealing with. So if tonight's dinner was just another one of Audrey's mind games, if she was still playing her little charade, I wasn't going to argue. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't even be angry. I would simply end it on my terms. The Last Supper, that evening, as I stepped into the house, something felt different. The scent of home-cooked food drifted from the kitchen, something I hadn't experienced in months. A while ago, I might have seen this as an attempt to fix things, but I wasn't that fool anymore. Whatever this dinner was, it wasn't a peace offering. I took my seat, watching as she moved through the kitchen effortlessly, setting the table, pouring the wine, smiling as if we were just another happy couple sharing an intimate meal. We ate mostly in silence. She didn't ask about my day. I didn't ask about hers. The only sounds were the occasional clink of silverware, the quiet sips of wine, and the unspoken tension hovering between us like an unwelcome guest. Halfway through the meal, I set my fork down and met her gaze. She was too calm, too composed, like someone who had already made up her mind. Leaning back slightly, I asked, "So, have you ended your affair?" Not a single reaction. No guilt, no hesitation. Instead, She smirked, leaning back in her chair as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Then, with deliberate ease, she spoke. I'm leaving you. I exhaled slowly, not in frustration, in amusement. Once, those words would have shattered me. I would have pleaded, tried to fix things. But now, it just felt like the final page of a book I should have closed a long time ago. A genuine smile crossed my face. Without a word, I got up, walked to the bedroom, and returned with a neatly stacked set of papers. I placed them on the table in front of her and slid them across. Perfect. My voice was steady. I already signed the divorce papers. For the first time that evening, I saw it. Her confidence cracked. She hadn't expected this. Her eyes flickered from the papers to me, searching for a reaction, some kind of emotion she could twist against me. But there was nothing, just quiet detachment. Then, ding-dong, her head snapped toward the front door. She wasn't expecting anyone. I, on the other hand, had been waiting for this all night. Pushing my chair back, I took my time walking to the door. I pulled it open, and there she was, standing in the doorway. Effortlessly stunning was Audrey's best friend, the woman she had trusted with her secrets, the woman I had been growing closer to ever since I realized my marriage was already over. I stepped aside, gesturing toward her. Audrey, meet my new girlfriend. Her reaction was priceless. More than shock, betrayal, disbelief, maybe even regret. She had played her game, convinced she had already won. But she had forgotten one thing. When you play games, you better be ready to lose.